Today I will be discussing different functions, types, and sources of film sound specifically found in the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was directed by Stanley Kubrick, a very notable American director, screenwriter, and cinematographer. Many of Kubrick's works contain similar qualities. In a Rolling Stone article analyzing Kubrick, it is said that critics most often use one common word when describing his films: masterpieces. Stanley Kubrick was also the director of Dr. Strangelove, and after his success with that dark comedy, he wanted to create something slightly similar but with more elements of science fiction. 2001: A Space Odyssey is unlike any movie I've ever seen before. There are so many creative and stylistic elements that were tremendously unique to the film industry. That must be why the American Film Institute ranks this movie as 22nd on its list of the 100 greatest movies of all time. Released in 1968, this movie was revolutionary for the era in which it was produced. Inverse.com describes this movie by saying, its uniqueness divided audiences, artists loved its trailblazing visuals and abstract storytelling, while more casual moviegoers were confused and angry. A large part of the matchlessness of this film is its distinct forms of editing and sound. In this video, I'm specifically focusing on sound and how the sensory element is pivotal to creating a quality film. Winston Ryder and H.L. Bird were the two masterminds behind the sounds in this film. On page 388 of Looking at Movies by Richard Barsam and Dave Monahan, sound is described as talking, laughing, singing music, and the aural effects of objects and settings. It can be as expressive as any other narrative and stylistic elements of cinematic form. They claim that what we hear in a movie is often technologically more complicated to produce than what we see. And because of the constant advances in digital technology, sound may be the most intensely creative part of contemporary movie making. Steven Spielberg says, "The eyes see better when the sound is great." There are essentially two main functions of sound. One, to directly communicate meaning through dialogue or narration, and two, to supplement and intensify the world of the film. Let's look at two different types of sound. Diegetic sound originates from a source within a film's world, and non-diegetic sound comes from a source outside the world. In 2001: A Space Odyssey, there are many instances of the uses of both of these. There are several outer space scenes where the main characters, David Bowman and Frank Poole, are wearing their spacesuits, and all the audience hears is the sound of these characters breathing loudly. This is an example of diegetic sound. These intentionally overemphasized rhythmic breathing noises cause the audience to subconsciously be constantly aware of the character's oxygen intake. It makes the scenes more intense when the shrill sound of breathing is consistently present. The heavy breathing can also be an example of external sound that comes from within the world of the story and is heard by characters of the film. An example of non-diegetic sound in the film would be like the opening scene where the camera seems to be panning through space and all the while there's background music. We don't assume that this background music is actually present in outer space, but that it is outside the world of the film and added for amusement. This opening pan of space also contains ambient sound. One of the most brilliant uses of sound this movie explores is the sound of silence. It is ironically the most complex noise of all because it is undefined. It can be scary, lifeless, or whatever the viewer translates it as. It is dependent on the viewer's experience of the on-screen imagery. Kubrick said that he wanted to create a visual experience, one that bypassed verbalized pigeonholing and directly penetrated the subconscious with an emotional and philosophic content. I think he was successful in doing this simply through creating soundless scenes. The silent scene that was the most impactful for me during my viewing experience of this film was when Frank was falling to his death through the endless vortex of space. There is absolutely no sound present. It is almost uncomfortable for the viewer. It is a loud sort of silence. You notice it. I think this silence represented many things, but most obviously, it accentuated the nothingness of space and the ending of a life. To contrast the silent scenes that were so present throughout this film, there were several scenes that were just noisy. Like when Hal locked Dave out of the space station, all we hear is a cacophonous beeping noise. It repeats to the point of frustration, but it was scenes like this that made this film a standout. Overall, sound is a crucial part of movie making, and it really does make a film complete.